All right, let's dive right into this explainer and unlock the absolute secret to sounding like a native C2 speaker. Today, we're mastering adverb clauses of comparison. Look, if you've ever felt like your sentences are just kind of hitting a plateau, or maybe you really want to add that extra layer of sophistication to your formal writing and speaking, you are in the exact right place. We're going to break down the source material to give you the ultimate grammatical toolkit for advanced comparisons. So, to stop sounding repetitive and really elevate your formal English, we have to ask ourselves, how do we structure our sentences to compare things like an absolute pro? You see, basic comparisons are great for an everyday chat, saying things like, she is faster than him. Sure, that works. But when we step into academic or professional environments, we need a much higher level of precision. We need structures that show exactly how or to what extent things actually differ. Here's our quick roadmap for today's explainer. First, what are comparison clauses? Next, manner, how it happens, followed by degree, to what extent. Then we'll have a manner versus degree showdown, and finally, we'll wrap up with fixing common grammatical errors. Section 1. What are comparison clauses? Upgrading to C2 fluency. Okay, so what is the crucial difference here? Well, unlike simple phrases, these clauses actually bring their own subject and verb to the party to show how or to what extent things differ. They're dependent, meaning they obviously can't stand alone as a full sentence, but they attach themselves to a main clause to modify a verb, an adjective, or an adverb. Honestly, that addition of a subject and a verb is exactly what upgrades your sentence from a super basic comparison to a complex C2 level powerhouse. Think of this as your master recipe for success. You literally always need a main clause, your connecting conjunction, a subject, and a verb to complete the thought. For example, if we say, he worked harder than I expected, he worked harder is our main clause. Then is our subordinating conjunction, I is our subject, and expected is our verb. Boom. Once you master this four-step formula, you can build practically any comparison clause you could ever need. Section 2. Manner, how it happens, method, style, and behavior. These subordinating conjunctions are your go-to tools for answering the question of how an action is performed or like whom they are acting. When we talk about manner, we are focusing strictly on style, behavior, or method. So if you want to say someone did something in the exact same way as someone else, you use as. If you want to add some emphasis, you might use just as. And if you're dealing with an imagined situation, that's where as if and as though become your absolute best friends. This brilliantly illustrates how as if introduces a totally unreal or imagined comparison about her style or behavior. I mean, we don't actually know if she has a secret, right? Maybe she just ate the last cookie. But we're comparing her real smile to the hypothetical manner of someone who is hiding something juicy. It paints an incredibly vivid picture for the listener, way, way better than just saying she smiled mysteriously. Now, what's really fascinating here is the use of the subjunctive were instead of was in formal English. This is a classic C2 level up. Because as if introduces an imagined or unreal situation, he isn't actually the manager, we use the subjunctive mood. While you might hear as if he was in casual everyday speech, if you are writing an essay or speaking in a professional setting, swapping was for were instantly signals that you have a masterful grip on English grammar. Section 3. Degree. To what extent? Amount, intensity, and quantity. Leaving method behind for a second, let's switch gears. When you want to answer questions like how much or how far, you'll want to deploy these conjunctions of degree. We aren't talking about style anymore. We're talking about pure quantity and level. You have than for basic comparisons, as when two things hit the exact same level on a scale, and combinations like more than or less than to show greater or smaller degrees. These right here are the structural building blocks for analyzing data or expressing really strong opinions. This is a beautiful example of a proportional relationship, showing exactly how one degree directly impacts another. Using that the correlative construction is honestly one of the most elegant ways to show cause and effect in English. The intensity of the first action, working hard, directly dictates the extent of the second action, becoming successful. It's concise, it's punchy, and it flows incredibly well. Section 4. Manner versus degree showdown. The head-to-head comparison. Putting these side by side perfectly synthesizes everything we've covered, clearly dividing the how from the how much. If you're ever confused about which structure to use, just ask yourself what you are really trying to communicate. Are you describing a person's attitude or the way an action was performed? That's manner. Use as or as if. Are you measuring an amount or scaling an intensity? That's degree. Reach for then or as. Keeping this distinction crystal clear in your mind is literally half the battle. Section 5. Fixing common grammatical errors. Spot the mistake. Okay, while like is completely fine for casual chats, formal and academic English basically demands the sophisticated as if he were structure. You're going to hear acts like all the time in movies or at the coffee shop, and hey, that's totally okay. But remember, the whole goal of this explainer is to level up your formal communication. So in professional settings, swap out like for the conjunction as if, and whatever you do, don't forget that subjunctive were we talked about earlier. Let's think back to our formula from the very beginning. The clause needs its own subject and verb, which is exactly why then I do takes the trophy here. Saying then me reduces the whole comparison to just a simple phrase. To make it a true adverb clause of comparison and to be grammatically flawless in formal writing, you absolutely must provide the subject I and the auxiliary verb do. It feels a little rigid for sure, but it is the absolute hallmark of highly proficient English. Watch out because double comparisons are a total trap. Since taller already does the comparative heavy lifting, adding more is just grammatical overkill. The suffix er at the end of tall literally already means more tall. So when you say more taller, you're essentially saying more tall, which, let's be honest, makes absolutely no sense. Always trust the base rules of your adjectives before you start throwing extra degree conjunctions in front of them. When you're using the as structure to show inequality, always use the base adjective, not the comparative form. Just like the double comparison error we just looked at, the as framework already does the job of comparing for you. You just sandwich the completely normal base adjective right in the middle. It's as smart as fast as bright as. Keep it simple and let the conjunctions do the heavy lifting. By applying the rules of manner and degree from this explainer, you now have the tools for absolute precision. So the big question is, how will you upgrade your next sentence? Whether you're detailing exactly how a process works using a clause of manner, or arguing to what extent a new policy will be effective using a clause of degree, you are completely ready to communicate with nuance and sophistication. Remember our proportional rule from earlier? The more you practice these structures, the easier they become. Keep experimenting, keep learning, and I will see you in the next explainer.